Hey, welcome to another show of RPMHD, NHRA Race Recap. I'm your host, Mike D, here with Dave W. Dave, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to get this season started because it has been a long winter, and I am so glad to see cars back on track.
Yeah, it has been a long winter. We had a little bit of a teaser with the Pro Winter Shootout, but outside of that, there hasn't been much going on. There's been some testing, but our first national event of the year, Gainesville, Florida. What's your take on it? Did it disappoint or not disappoint?
To me, it was a disappointment. It's a disappointment to start the year out the way that it was, in the simple fact that you lost all day Saturday. You got to move the Top Fuel All-Star call out to Pomona. The sportsman classes didn't finish any of their eliminations. The Pro Mods and the factory stocks are moving to Joliet. I feel bad for the fans that were there because you didn't get much of a show other than the pro cars. And if that's what you came to see, great. But on the other hand, you did get to see some national records broken. You did get to see some epic competition. And you got to see a pretty upside-down Sunday eliminations with the track as a big variable with not anybody being on it in over 24 hours and a lot of rubber and a lot of bald spots on that starting line. Made for some pretty exciting action on race day.
No, it definitely did. We'll get into all those things. I mean, we can start off. We don't have to necessarily start off with Pro Stock. With Top Fuel, we can start off with Pro Stock. How about Greg Anderson? First race of the year, sets the national record, 6:44.
Oh, that was amazing. And everybody said the air was there. I think that the corrected altitude was around 300 foot or so by the time they ran that session on Friday night. So that was definitely the session. You had 6 drivers that set their career best speeds. You had 8 drivers that had career best ATs. And you had some guys that didn't make it down the track. Cody Coughlin, in his much anticipated debut, a DNQ, 2 runs, 2 struggling passes to get down. Was surprised not to see him part of the field, but I mean, 6:44 with a 3. Everybody said, man, the EFI, which the EFI isn't really the limiting factor, it's the rev limiter that they put in place. That's really what's holding them back. But to have that pass come out like that, I mean, it's awesome to see records broken. And it's been a while since we've seen it, since Erica Enders back in 2022.
Yeah, and I believe when she did it, she lost at Gainesville on a whole shot setting the record, I believe.
Yeah, in the first round. Yes, you did. Yep, you are correct.
Now, with that being said, these cars are so dependent on the air and the air quality to even run that quick. Do you think that they need to maybe adjust the rev limiters to maybe a higher RPM as opposed to what it is now, which I believe is set at 10,500 RPM?
I mean, I think that they could. I mean, even if they bumped it up to 11,000 or 11,500, how many teams are easily able to achieve that? And a couple years ago, when this conversation came up in the pit area at Houston when I was there, some of the teams were like, hey, even the pro stock motorcycles rev up higher than we do. We're the ones that are limited in our RPM, and it really is stifling our performance. Is it a good factor because it keeps the field closer together? Or is it something that, you could probably bump it up a little bit and let these guys run? They changed valve springs as just preventative maintenance now anymore with these passes. So that was the big thing, is it was supposed to cause a big monetary savings because you weren't leaning on the parts as hard and hurting everything. And you didn't have to do as much research and development to try and continuously see where the limit is. So I think after this amount of time, if we just bump it up a little bit, give them a little more ET, you'll see it more at the other tracks where the weather is not so favorable, but they can quicken them up a little bit.
Yeah, I spoke with Big Al Lindsay a few years back, and the word from him was, with the valve spring issue, before this rule, you were pretty much swapping out valve springs every run. Now you can get about 4 runs in on a set of valve springs, just depending. And it saves them quite a bit. I don't know how much a valve spring bill would be back in the old days, or I'm going to say the old days, but 7-8 years ago throughout a season, how much you were spending on valve springs, but I'm guessing you're saving quite a bit. But then again, it's all in how you look at it. If you have a valve spring bill for a season that's $200,000, well, the amount of money it costs to run pro stock in a season, is $200,000 really going to be the difference between you making the full season or not? As far as the Bowspring bill, who am I to say? I don't think it should,
And I guess the other considering factor is there's only 4, maybe 5 engine builders out there, because Elite and KB have the majority of them. The McGahe's put together some motors, and then Frank Iaconio puts some motors together for the Quadras. So I'm not sure who does some of the other teams where they get, if they're on a leasing program as well, but 4 to 5 different engine builders that are out there doing it, that are absorbing most of the cost anyway, because they're the ones putting the power plants out there. I guess they would be the ones that would probably make the decision of if it's worth it or not.
Correct. And I don't know. It remains to be seen. I haven't heard anyone cry about, or not cry, but express their opinion about changing it. So I guess it's fine for where it is right now. Continuing in pro stock, though, I mean, from the end of last season to the beginning of this season, the more things changed, which the calendar year did, the more they stayed the same. Dallas Glenn, Greg Anderson final round.
It did end up that way. The one thing that didn't stay the same, though, was, we usually had the big 4 in pro stock. That's what we talked about throughout the countdown, the end of the year, the Elite versus the KB. But missing was Erica Enders and Aaron Stanfield in the late rounds. You had Jed Coughlin in there taking one of their places, but very surprising to see that the Elite teams really seem to struggle in Gainesville more than expected.
Well, I'm trying to think. Erica, did she win Gainesville last year?
She did.
She won Gainesville last year. The year before that,
last win. So she's a full calendar year since she's won an event.
Yeah. Elite did not look elite in Gainesville, Florida,
no,
to say the least. And Jeg only got there due via hole shot against Eric Latino, or they would have all been gone by round 2.
Correct. Yeah, Jeg won it on his driving for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you look at KB Titan was definitely there to play. I don't know if maybe the the Saturday rain out, everyone just kind of, it might have affected the Elite team more than anyone else with the Saturday rain out. Maybe they needed a few extra shots at the racetrack or whatnot, and it just didn't happen. It's just part of the sport. Unfortunate but true. Gainesville has a history of having some rain from time to time, and it bit them again on that Saturday. I'm not going to say that was the reason, but it certainly couldn't have helped the Elite team for Sunday.
No, definitely not. But I guess even in general, if you look through the qualifying rundown, we talked about earlier, Eric Enders, the previous record holder, with a 6:45.0, and usually the flagship car of the Elite team. You would have expected when they come in there and they go into that second session on Friday that they would have had that thing loaded up, and only 650 with a 3. When you have, and it's not to take anything away from these other teams or competitors, but when you've got Matt Hartford, Derek Reese, Mason McGahe, all these guys are up in the top half of the field or right around what the performance is and out-qualify the likes of Erica Enders, Aaron Stanfield, Jed Coughlin. It kind of makes you go, that's unusual. Like, is Elite struggling that bad, or did these guys find something in the off season,
Well, speaking of find something, Derek Reese, where did that come from?
Exactly. Yeah, that was. And then to match up, you qualified in the top half of the field. You got a career best ET, career best speed, and first round you get Eric Enders. Good luck.
Yeah, and he wins.
And he did. Yes, he did. Not to take anything away from the performance of that team at all, but obviously there was a very tricky track. They were the first pair out, which you never want to be in pro stock. They always say you want to run later in there, let them get the rubber down, take care of the starting line. And unfortunately, and dead even on reaction times, 0.36 a pair.
Yeah.
But Erica's car shook the tires, shattered the tires, and that was it. She pushed the clutch back in, and a 6:59 to me from Derek Reese was beatable.
Yeah, it was. He didn't really show on Sunday anything matching the performances. Everyone slowed down on Sunday as opposed to those hero runs they made on Friday. But him maybe more so than others. Guys slowed down maybe 500s. He slowed down close to about 800 to 900s, but he was still there playing. Right. Made it to the second round. unfortunately ran up against a buzzsaw, which was Greg Anderson, who,
yes.
I mean, that guy, you know, you couldn't necessarily pencil him in to beat Dallas Glenn the final round, even though he was pretty much undefeated against him in final rounds, but you knew Glenn was going to be coming for him. And I mean, of all the times for Greg Anderson to have a mechanical issue, or not necessarily a mechanical issue, just missed it on the setup, that was the wrong time to have it. And Dallas Glenn was, you know, just happy he did it.
I will say this. If it made it to the finish line, though, Dallas Glenn had over 0.03 of a second in the bank by the time they left the Christmas tree. And those cars were pretty evenly matched throughout race day. So I don't know that even if Greg didn't shake the tires, he's going to drive around that Rad Torque Systems Camaro.
Probably not. But it surprised me definitely when Greg spun the tires right off the starting line. That was the last thing I expected to see happen. But you know what? Credit to Dallas Glenn. I mean, the whole KB Titan team, I mean, they all won once they got to the final round. And once Jeg was gone by the semis, I mean, it was pretty much celebration was starting right then and there. It was just who was going to take home the trophy. And yesterday it was Dallas Glenn. Once again, the early season points leader, as he's been the last couple years now, Dallas Glenn.
He does. He usually takes over early. He's usually the regular season champ, and the last couple years has been the overall season champ, just without the countdown, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, this year, and I'm glad you said that, there's a little extra incentive for being a regular season champ.
Yeah.
I believe NHRA is paying a little extra coins for each individual class for being a regular season champ.
Mm-hmm.
Will that tip the scale as far as teams laying down to help each other, as we've seen? And we're not going to say it doesn't happen because we all know what happens. You know, you got a guy that's 11th or whatnot, and he's like, hey, I'm pretty far up there. You know, will that change things, you think?
I don't think so. I don't think you're going to go into you're not going to go into the U.S. Nationals with 1.5 points and see, let's just say, Eric Latino taking a dive for Dallas Glenn if it gets him to regular season championship. You know, you got to remember, if we're talking about taking dives and we're getting into the last race of the year for the regular season, that's Indy. Nobody's going to throw away their U.S. Nationals for somebody else just because they're going to be a regular season champ. You want to win Indy. Yeah,
you make a valid point with that, and that definitely does make sense. Unless you're Team Force in 2009.
Yeah, that's true. Not one enough.
Yeah. But moving on, which way should we go? Well, you know what? Once again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Pro stock motorcycle.
Yeah.
A 2-horse race again? I mean, that's what it looks like.
You know, until somebody steps up enough or puts those guys on the trailer, I feel like you kind of have to go that route. You kind of have to be there and say, well, you know what? Look at the runs that they made on race day, though. Because I know qualifying is one thing, but we had a whole different set of conditions on race day. And race day is just an entire set of conditions in general. And those two motorcycles were the class of each round. They consistently had a couple hundreds on the next best rider, and they consistently got quicker as the day went on, culminating with a pair of 72s in the final, which obviously, yes, the air got cooler, the weather got better, whatever the case may be. But just looking at their performance versus the rest of the field, if you took those two motorcycles out of the equation, it's an anybody can win race. But those two guys are still the class leaders as far as I'm concerned until somebody proves up and steps up and proves us otherwise.
The only way you're going to beat those bikes, Matt Smith's going to have to break, which isn't far-fetched. And you're going to have to leave on Gage Herrera, which doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen either. I mean, Gage Herrera is pretty good on the treat, as he proved in the final round.
Yes.
It's going to be hard to outrun those two guys this year. I mean, Matt Smith, they're pretty equal. I can't really say who has the better bike. Gage's bike tends to ET maybe a couple thou better, but Matt bikes tends to run about 1 mile an hour better. So one front half's better than the other back half's better. I mean, they are so equal, just completely differently equal. You got one's a Suzuki, one's a Buell, one front half's well, one back half's well. I think in order for Matt to have a shot, because I was rooting for him all last year, he's definitely going to have to limit the breakage as far as, bike shutting off at 60 feet or 330. I mean, even in the final round, I mean, I was almost like, oh my God, not again. Thank God they got the bike started, but we're going to, if Matt can keep his stuff together and not have the technical difficulties and leave on time, which surprised me because he usually steps up when he needs to. I didn't expect to see him that late on the tree yesterday in the final round. He usually when he know he needs to step up, he'll usually pull an 020 light out there. He didn't do it and would have made it a much closer race, but I mean, that's pretty much declassified those two bikes. I mean, one of them's going to have to go red, one of them's going to have to break, or you're going to have a huge hole shot on one of them to beat them. You're not just going to outrun either one of them.
No, and Matt did make a post on Facebook today and was basically commenting and talking about his race day. And he said, for the most part, he was just off on the tree in the early rounds. He's like, I just couldn't hit the tree. He wasn't playing games. He wasn't trying to, sandbag a little on the starting line just to ensure that he didn't red light. And because he knew he had the other bike covered per se, he just said, man, I just had a hard time hitting the tree. And it got better a little bit. I mean, he had an 098 and a 105 lights the first two rounds and a 64 and a 63 in the semis and the finals. But like you said, just wasn't good enough when Gage Herrera's putting up, 020 and 030 lights all day. He had a 014. Gage, although in the first round was off his game. He had a 116 light when Gino went red in the first round. But other than that, yeah, when your bike is a couple hundredths ahead of the next closest one, and you can be within a couple hundredths on the tree, you're pretty much locking them out right then and there. So,
yeah, I mean, that's in a short story. That is the story, and that it's just going to be, it's Schultz and Myers, like I said last year. It's Schultz and Myers all over again. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Who I'm more partial to, I guess. I view one team as the big corporate takeover, and I view one team as the blue collar team that's just trying to make it happen. And it's actually a great story to watch. You have this blue collar team versus this corporate machine, and it's actually pretty cool. I wish we could see a few more bikes in the mix. I think is it the War Racing? Or is it still owned by War? Or is it owned by the White Alligator Racing team?
I believe it is still, yes, with Chase Van Zandt and Chris Bostic.
I think they're gonna, show some flashes. I think it's just consistency. I think they can usually, on a good day, they can run within 200 or 300 of those two main bikes. But they're just gonna be a little more consistent. And I think they can make it interesting. Gage is just Gage. The one bike I think we have to watch out for is Richard Gadsden. That guy's a win looking for a place to happen. It just hasn't happened. But this has got to be the year he sneaks himself in there somewhere. I would have thought he would have gotten a win last year and it didn't happen. But we'll see.
Well, it's kind of like with when they switched the bikes around or switched the riders around and it was Gage and Eddie were teammates. Eddie just couldn't beat him. Eddie, and he's definitely a winning rider. He just couldn't win races, at least back in the earlier days of the Harleys, the Screaming Eagles. Andrew and Eddie kind of went back and forth when it came to wins.
It was much more even.
Like it's been way more one-sided, and Gage is just the class of the field.
Is it the bike or the rider?
It makes you wonder. I'm sure that they're probably preparing them pretty equally, but I saw a photograph that somebody posted on Facebook of the final round, and it's very interesting to me because I never really get to see pictures. You watch them go down the track, but it happens so fast you don't really get to pay attention to it. The way that they have their body English and the way that they ride, and it's interesting because Matt Smith was in one. You could see how Matt's body was oriented, and you can see how Gage's was. And they basically are both, I'm assuming they must have sight windows or something below the fairings because they are looking straight down. And Gage's helmet pretty much tucks right behind the windscreen. So it's like he becomes part of the motorcycle as it's going down the track. And Matt he's got a real short windscreen and his helmet's up in the air, but they're both, they got their heads down like this. So they literally got to be looking at the front tire touching the track. Like they ain't looking in front of them. There's no way based on where their visors are, And I just thought it was interesting because I've never really seen a freeze frame or snapshot of them at speed going down the track. And it's amazing the positionings that they put themselves in on those motorcycles to get them to the other end.
Yeah, and I'll be interested in seeing that photo. I've got, you got the cards that you can see behind me. You might have some when they're launching off the starting line, their heads are pretty much up and kind of tucked behind the windscreen. But it'd be interesting to see how their body's looking, where their heads are placed at 1,000 foot in a freeze frame shot.
Yes,
they're
down. They are not up.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. And the biggest thing to me was before Richard was on that bike, it was Eddie Krawick, correct?
Yes.
And Gage had about 300 to 500s on him, and then you put Richard Gatson on there, and he's still the same. It didn't matter who you put on that second bike. Gage still had 300 to 500s, and it's like, okay, is it the rider or the bike? And they were so I can't go ahead.
If you think a little bit before that, though, before Gage got on, Angel, when she was on the bike, was pretty quick. If she could keep it between the center line and get it down the track, that bike was quick.
No, it was definitely a fast bike. And ultimately that's what kind of cost her probably her ride on that bike was because it was heading left or heading right. She couldn't keep it straight.
Yes.
And, maybe that tells you maybe it's that bike.
But I'm sure after all this time, it's not the same bike in the same body work and everything after 3-4 years by now. They got to have changed something.
Yeah, I don't know. Because the Harleys were so equal, like you said, Eddie and Andrew were kind of trading back and forth. It was kind of like whoever left first. Maybe one bike had 100th on this day, but that was about it. They were very much equal. And here it's just Gage just has it. And maybe it is his riding technique that just has this. They saw something they liked when they saw him at the U.S. Nationals a few years ago, where they gave that guy a phone call and said, "Hey, we want you to ride for us." So,
right.
Well, where are we to head next?
Well, I saw the big funny car news. The report from Susan Wade. I don't know if you saw that on Facebook. The press release of, I guess, a news story that she posted about Robert Hight, no longer with John Force Racing, officially retired from funny car and definitely on another business venture.
I hadn't even read that. It's been a long weekend.
We don't anticipate or expect seeing Robert Hight back in that AAA or Cornwell Tools Camaro anytime soon. Looks like that's going to be Austin Proc's full-time deal now.
Well, if that's the case, we can't speculate. We'll just have to say it is what it is. I know he was sidelined due to a medical procedure. We don't know the extent of that medical procedure, and that's his own privacy and how he chooses to deal with it. But obviously it's to the effect to where he's decided to take a step back and focus on other business ventures and do things else in his life. He did it for almost 20 years now, so I guess everyone gets tired of it after a while.
Yeah, I can't fault the man. He's done it for a long time and was very successful at what he did, won a lot of championships, won a lot of races. And the funny thing is, I always say sometimes when you look at John Force's statistics, and for the most part, Robert is second to him in most of them. But even if Robert's career started right now and he had the exact same career for the next 20 years, he still wouldn't catch John Force's numbers. So that's just how far out John Force is in front of everybody else, knowing that he's more than double what the second best has done.
Yeah, I don't see. They say records are meant to be broken, but some of John's just aren't going to be broken. he did it for so long. I think he won his first championship. He might have been 39, 40 years old. And I mean, he's about 75, 76 now. So I don't know how many people are going to necessarily do that and be that good and win that many races.
Right.
There aren't too many Austin Coils walking through that door. So yeah, it might be a while before we see anything like that ever again, if ever.
Well, and the amazing thing too is, since we're talking about streaks and everything else, and John Force Racing, Robert Height was the last one to win the Gatornationals for John Force Racing way back in 2019. They have just not had the success at Gainesville like John used to. When you consider all the wins that he put together, he was pretty much unbeatable at the place in the mid to late 90s.
Well, yeah. Well, they've gone to the finals. I believe they were in the finals last year and lost. And I mean,
Yeah.
they made a few finals, but no, they have not won there in quite a while.
Well, no, but I mean, and their performance this weekend is kind of a lead up to that too. I mean, you had opposite ends of the spectrum. Beckman, number one qualifier, Austin Prock struggling, had that terrible parts breakage for the rear end that forced a huge delay Friday afternoon cleaning up the track, and he barely squeaked into the field. It's a good thing that he had a good number on the board, because 15th, that's crazy.
Yeah, who would ever thought? I mean, just once again, it goes to show you just how detrimental that rain was on Saturday. Definitely that team missed out on those runs. If anyone saw the Pro Winter Shootout, though they didn't win it, they definitely made their presence felt. I believe the Proc car went 378 or 379 on it.
Yep.
Yeah, at the Pro Winter Shootout. I mean, and so coming into Gainesville, my belief was, well, kind of like most of last year, you're gonna go beat the JFR cars. It's a funny car. I mean, that's the only way to the top. I mean, you're not hitting the winner circle unless you go through one of them. And by round 2, they were both gone.
Right.
And they could have very easily both been gone in round 1. Beckman did a decent pedal job and got out of it and saved it, but not the weekend I think that team was looking for or anticipating, especially in funny car.
No, not at all. And, but on the flip side of that, that opens the door for all the other teams who never really get the limelight, never really get to go rounds, and to get put in the forefront because of those guys. I mean, they were consistently semifinal or final round competitors all through the end of last year. And the fact that both of them were out early, that opened the door, just wide open for everybody else. And what a show it was.
Oh, yeah. It opened the door for Chad Green. Who had him? I think he was 29-1 on the NHRA little
odds,
play thing. Yeah, 29-1. You put $20 on Chad Green, you're smiling ear to ear today. I mean,
and I didn't. I
should have. Well, especially in the semis, when you seen that team hustling up to the starting line and rushing to get everything going. I think they had to swap motors before the semifinals, and you figure, well, once that happened, you feel like, well, usually when that happens, someone leaves something loose, there's a fuel leak or something goes wrong. And then it ran the second quickest ET of the day at 330 miles an hour. I believe it ran at 392 at 330. It was like, whoa.
And on top of it, they come out there and they stomp Matt Hagan. Hagan goes out there and runs a 398, and he's not even in the picture. And you're like, wow.
And if you're Hagan, you're probably figuring that's probably what we had to set up to run. We figured that'll handle him, and he's showing up late, and they're rushing and screwing stuff on the car still. You figure, hey, let's just go A to B, we'll be all right. And Hagan's scratching his head when they go through the lights. Where'd that come from? I mean,
yeah, he's chasing them.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, And then the guys regroup and then win the event. And it was just like Ron Capps is sitting there trying to figure out where's his trophy at. Well, Chad Green's over there holding it up. That's where it's at, and that's the way the mob flops sometimes. I mean, Capps hadn't won a race since India 2023. I'm sure those guys were just salivating, figuring, hey, it's Chad Green. Now, let's not forget, Chad Green ain't just a rollover. This guy was a semifinal fixture back in the 2023 season.
Correct.
His crew chief, Daniel Wilkerson, went to drive his father's car. He brought in his pro mod guys to kind of assist with the tuning. It looks like it just took him about a year to just kind of get up to par and get things rolling. But, hey, Chad Green's your points leader. However you want to look at it, Chad Green is your points leader. How long will it last? We'll find out.
Well, and I for one am. When it came to the play NHRA, I put my money on Caps. So when he was in the finals, I was like, all right, I'm in the money. Because I, much like you, didn't give Chad much of a chance. And I honestly was surprised that Caps shook the tires and went up and smoked the way that he did. I figured even if Chad could beat him, you'd see a good side-by-side, flames-up race to the finish line. I did not expect that out of Caps' car and their tune-up for the day. But it just seems to be how they've been lately. That he didn't really win a lot of rounds on just going out there and stomping people. He made a couple of good runs, but then he had a couple of not so good runs and managed to get himself to the finals. And it just kind of seems like the luck they've been having lately. It's hard to say after one race, is this a turnaround for the Ron Caps team? And is this a preview of things to come for Chad Green's team? Like you're saying, is this the Chad Green of 2023 that was a consistent semifinalist and end up winning his first race at Pomona to close out the year? If he could start 2025 and continue on with that, they'll just forget 2024 even happened at this point.
Well, so far, they've already had a better year than 2024. They won a race.
Yep, they did. Yes.
So you really can't complain about that. And as far as the Caps team, that surprised me in the final round as well, because as tricky as that racetrack was, they had enough shots at it to where they should have been able to go down there without having that problem in the final round, theoretically speaking.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, but it's, take nothing away from Chad Green and that team. I mean, first round, went out there, got down the track, 395, 324. Paul Lee was going to be a tough competitor. I mean, if you look at it based on the way that they qualified, Chad was definitely the underdog. Paul Lee was the higher qualified car. And because they missed that night session on Friday night, they had an oil pressure issue, if you remember, and they got shut off on the starting line. Didn't even get to make the run. Comes out round 2 against Buddy Hull, 410, 312. All right, quick pedal job. Goes out there in round 3, like you said, and this team is on all the teams. You know what? Kudos to all the Nitro teams. Everybody was on hurried turnaround. The rains came not too long after the finals ran, which basically postponed the rest of the sportsman classes. So they were just busting their butts to get back to the starting line and get up there and beat the rain. Comes out there, like you said, all these troubles, goes 392, 330. And they must have just put the same tune-up in it because he came right back and round robin for the final, run 392, 329. So they must have said, you know what? That setup worked. That lane worked. Let's just put this thing on repeat and see what happens. And they walked away with the trophy.
Yeah, and that's the first thing I noticed when they went down the track and I saw the ET. I said, they just left the same tune-up in it.
Exactly.
So this is rerunning it. If he beats us, he beats us, but we ain't finna beat ourselves. We saw that this worked, and that we'll just roll with it. Well, Chad Green's your points leader. Ron Caps had a great weekend. I'm sure he has nothing to hang his head about.
No.
I do believe the JFR cars will be back between Phoenix and Pomona. I don't think they're going to stay down for long based off what we saw the Pro Winter Shootout.
For sure.
Matt Hagan, same team, just a new guy calling the shots. Showed consistency, made it to the semifinals. The car, I think everybody's waiting to wake up, and I'm not going to say it was asleep because this weekend was just kind of a one-off with the track conditions and the weather is J.R. Todd. Dickie Venables heading over there. I think people are really waiting for that car to start roaring its head and putting up the numbers. We ain't necessarily saying it's going to run like Proc, but, within 200 to 300s of it.
No, but that was going to be my question for you, since they pretty much had, the crew chief swap going on there, and what your thoughts of Hagan's performances and JR's performances on race day. JR didn't really seem to really have a good handle on it in qualifying. They never really got, that big monster run like you'd expect that car to be, and then go out there in first round. Again, not that they get anything away from Bobby Bodie, but, the Worsham car gets down the track, in a pedal fest with JR. And Bobby's able to get it to hook up and get down to the finish line and turn on the win light. So that was kind of surprising to me to see JR out first round, considering, again, like we talked about Eric Enders, his last win came here in 2024. He was defending champion of the Gatornationals from 2024, and then ended up, on the trailer first round was not how we had this one playing out.
No, but considering the track conditions and what took place, especially if you look at round one at Top Fuel, I think Tony Stewart had the best run, maybe. And everyone, it was just a pedal fest every run. I mean, it might have been one of the worst rounds. And I hate to say worst rounds of Top Fuel I've seen in quite a while, but there was no one who really got down the track outside of Tony Stewart. I mean, it was who can pedal your car the best, and Funny Car was kind of the same fate. I can't really say that the JR Todd car is a presser of things to come based off his round one loss, because track conditions were just, well, I don't know if you heard Brian Karate, but he said he had a word, he just wasn't going to say it.
No, I think that was the general consensus. I mean, and we haven't got to Top Fuel yet, but after the incident in the first round, and Steve Torrance was next up in line. I mean, he jumped out of that car and was not. I don't think he was prepared to run on that racetrack unless they did something to it, which is why they started dragging the starting line, and then the rain came and it postponed all that. But I don't think that a lot of the crew chiefs were really wanting to run the track the way that it was, and very critical that NHRA could have spent most of the morning dragging it and getting more rubber put down on it than what it was. And I agree with that to a point, but you also have to look at what you're given and go, okay, we didn't have anything on this track. Normally we got all the sportsman cars. Everybody's running on this thing night and day. We had nothing go down the track all day Saturday. It got rained on, it got washed on, it got scrubbed. They had to re-drag it, re-prep it, re-spray it, all that stuff. And we started at 9:30, which, yes, we did have daylight savings time, so it's technically like a 10:30 start for that. But the crew chiefs had to go up there and go, man, this thing ain't got nothing on it. Take as much clutch and power out of this thing as you can and hope it sticks. And the only one that did was Tony Stewart's team.
I don't think he did. I think that's just how slow that car is. Yeah.
They didn't back it down. They just don't have that much power to begin with.
Yeah, they just don't have no power to begin with. They didn't back down. They went up there with a home run setup, and that was it. I mean, it just went down the track. I mean,
yeah, they were swinging for it.
Unfortunate but true. I mean, I'm watching on TV. I looked from the drone view before round one started, and I'm looking at the start line and said, oh my goodness, there's
there was
no rubber down
from that drone shot. I agree.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
And I was just like, this should be interesting. And people who've never watched it or seen it before, there's nothing wrong with cool conditions in a tight racetrack, but you got to have rubber down.
Right.
And without any rubber down, I mean, that's what you're going to get. I mean, it's either go or blow. Conditions out there were definitely for 60s. We didn't see them until the final round in Top Fuel. Right. Speaking of that, we can go into that right now. I mean,
but one quick question before you put a period on Funny Car. I want to get your thoughts. How about Alexis DeJoria? How about their debut with the JCM racing team with a new Dodge body instead of a Toyota on the car, having to put the thing back together after blowing it up, getting back and going all the way to the semis?
And then I really want to know what happened to semi. She double stepped, but she still left on time with a slight double step. Then the car quit, and I'm like, did she think she red lit? Like, why did the car quit? I wish I would have known, because I didn't see it smoke the tires, at least from my angle.
It was weird. It looked like when they showed the replay, the car never stopped rolling. Like it kind of like rolled through the beams and then like took off. So I think that's why it had such a good light. And then she was like, like you said, did I red light? And then just lifted because the race was over at that point.
But she didn't red light.
She didn't. No, if she would have just pedaled down, I mean, she would have had a couple hundreds, a whole shot.
Yeah. So I'm like, and I wish no one talked to her. At least I didn't see an interview. I'm thinking, why did she lift? I'm like, did the throttle linkage break? Did something break, or did she just lift? Because I didn't see any smoke come off those tires.
Well, and then you go out there and you see Caps puff the tires later on. He only goes a 401 280. If she just gets in it, I mean, she still ran a 590 at 115, so she was moving, but she wasn't under power. If she would have just pedaled it and tried to get it down the track, I think that she probably could. I mean, Caps was there for the taking. And
I don't even know if she needed the pedal. I didn't see the car shake or anything.
I didn't. I don't know what. Like I say, she probably just was like, "Oh crap, it's rolling." I went red, lift, and that was it.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what happened. Mike Neff's on that car. Am I correct?
I am not 100% sure who they've got on the crew chiefs of that car.
I believe it's Mike Neff.
I believe it is. Let me scroll here and just take a quick peek. at least two they have listed for the particular crew chief, Mike Neff and Todd Smith both.
Correct. Mike Neff and Todd Smith, because Schaefer's on the Ida Zetterstrom dragster.
Yes.
He was working with Phil Schuler. Phil Schuler has since gone over to the Matt Hagen car, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to getting down even a hot racetrack or a tricky racetrack, Mike Neff is one about as best as it gets. I like Mike Neff as a funny car crew chief. Once they figured out their clutch issues with that Tony Schumacher dragster last year, it was actually a serious player. The problem is they kept running into Justin Ashley, getting beat on hole shots. Right. But the car actually woke up. She had a great weekend as far as Alexis. And she very well, considering we don't really know what happened to semis, might have been able to win that race. She ran low ET of race day in round one. She left there with low ET of race day. So,
looking forward, do you think that Alexis and Chad Green can kind of carry this momentum on through the next couple races at Phoenix and Pomona?
Chad Green, I think, is still up in the air. Alexis, because of who her crew chief is, here's her only thing: as long as she leaves the starting line on time,
should be
good. If Alexis can just be 70 or better on a tree, which is saying a lot for Alexis consistently. With Mike Neff tuning that car, she can seriously be a factor, especially once the summertime comes around, because Mike Neff is pretty good on hot racetracks, as he proved with Tasca a few years ago. When it gets hot, Mike Neff's pretty good on a hot racetrack. He's good on a cool racetrack too. It's not too many better tuners out there for funny car than a Mike Neff. And if she can leave the starting line on time, I think she can be a factor.
Okay.
You're talking a top 5 car. The car that I'm waiting to turn around, and I don't know if it ever will. It shows flashes, and then it lets me down every year, and I've been talking about this for the past 2 seasons, and I know you know who I'm talking about, Cruz Petrogan. Cruz Petrogan, man. That is my guy, and I don't know. I'm rooting for him.
It's like being a Bears fan.
Yeah.
You're optimistic every year, and then they don't make the playoffs.
Every year I'm optimistic with Cruz, man. I'm like, this is it, man. He's going to be a top 5 player. This is it. And then he teases me and shows me a great low 80 run, and then he just – I don't know. He qualified. That's a start. He was gone round 1. The car turned on a blinker and almost headed towards the other way, but
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still keeping my fingers crossed that they're going to hit on something, and things are just going to turn around for that team. I'm looking forward to it happening. We'll see.
No better place than Phoenix coming up next.
Yeah, and I'll be there, so we'll see what happens with that.
Oh, that's right. You're going to. Yeah, that's right. That'd be good.
Yeah, I'll be there. We'll see what happens. But once again, take nothing away from Chad Green. Now, if he wins within the next 2 races again, then hey, all of a sudden Chad Green's a serious. Not to say he was never a factor. Like I said, that guy was a semifinal round fixture in 2023, and we may be seeing that again. Only time will tell. I think by the time we get to the Charlotte 4-wide, you'll pretty much have an idea of who the real players are going to be. Anyone can make a late season run, through the Western swing or whatever the case may be. But by the time Charlotte comes around, we'll see where those cars line up with the Capses and the Chad Greens of the world. We'll see.
Yeah, backs up.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. It'll figure itself out. Shoot, we ain't got to figure out nothing. We just got to watch and sit back and wait for the results.
You got to watch the door. Yeah, exactly.
As far as Top Fuel, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're leading to Top Fuel and talking about the points and who's going to end up where and how that thing's going to go on, look, I know they didn't get to run Saturday. I know they didn't get to run the All-Star call-out. I know that the rest of qualifying got rained out. I know it's a shame because some of the cars didn't get to really make representative runs, and it kind of jumbled up the ladder. But when you look at the final qualifying sheet, number 1, Antron Brown, to number 7, Sean Reed, and that's 12 thousandths of a second between them all. That's like pro stock. Yeah. The top 7 and Top Fuel were closer than first and second in pro stock. How about that?
No,
I mean,
It's definitely
this is 2024 did not end. Like, it's just keep on keeping on, and anybody can win, but the best stepped up and best got it done.
Well, here's where things change. There's no Billy Torrance this year, or at least as of now. I don't know at all this year.
Right.
We don't know if Steve's going to run the whole tour. From what we're hearing, that he's not. But
he announced that he was. They talked to him in Gainesville, and he said he's running. He's more determined than ever this year after losing the championships the last couple of years the way that he has. He's like, I got something to prove, and we're out here. We're going to win this championship back.
He was right there. I mean, Antron was just psychotic on the light yesterday. He definitely was up for the game. And then we got Tony Schumacher coming back. When? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I think it's just a partial schedule this year, right?
I'm not really sure of the details of it. I haven't even read into it. I was just listening to it on the NHRA live cast. I just know he's teaming up with the Rick Ware Racing team, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That should be interesting. The Sarge making a return, who the crew chief is going to be, how things are going to work out. I had the Sarge winning this thing last year, and he kept running to Justin Ashley, and it messed me up, but it's all right. Top fuel, I mean, and let's just start over. Antron Brown qualifies number 1, like you said, which he hadn't been, I don't know. And not only does he do that, he wins the event. Here's the funny thing about that. Yeah, he won the championship last year. Yes, he won 3 races in the countdown this year. I didn't have him winning games. I just didn't. It's not to take anything away from Antron. It was just like he kind of has this car that can run a number at any given time. His driving can save him. It's kind of the total package without being the total package, so to speak. He doesn't really scare me. If I'm a top fuel guy, I'm not afraid of him. It's okay. He's not going to run low ET of the world. He's going to run at 69, and you can run with him, and you can beat him if you leave on time. Whereas Sean Langdon and Doug Coletta scare you. Justin Ashley scares you. Antron doesn't really scare me. And credit to that team. They made all the right runs at all the right time, and that guy was on his driving. I mean, he was 30 on the tree and whatnot. I mean, you can't take nothing away from him. He did what he had to do as a true champion would, and he won the event. And that's kudos to that team. I mean, Mark Oswald no longer there. They didn't miss a beat. I mean, qualified number 1. I believe they went 64th the Pro Winter Shootout with last year's car after they blew the tire on this year's car and had to redo the chassis. Come back and win the first event out. I mean, what more can you look for to Antron Brown? I mean, that's the way you want to start a season if you're the champ.
And see, this is it's funny that you put it that way and you say, you know what, I don't fear Antron Brown, but that's like he said in his interview in Pomona. He's like, you know what, I come in like black ice. You don't see me, but I'm gonna get you. And when you look at the overall picture, he has won 7 of the last 16 national events, almost half. He has won of the last 16. You remember him more for his struggles than his successes. So you don't really think of him as, he's going to go out there and do it. But he just sneaks up on you, picks up these wins, picks up the championship. And when he's on, he's on. And I mean, he's 65th career win in Top Fuel. He's number 2 on the list all time. You don't expect that. All the championships that he's amassed. And he's starting out 2025 in the points lead. And we go into Phoenix here. He's going to be obviously in the Mission Foods Challenge. So start getting bonus points towards the countdown for that. He's going to, he's got his shot at the All-Star call-out at Pomona. I mean, this could be the guy to watch.
He definitely can be. And here's where he sneaks up on you. He doesn't dominate.
No.
He just doesn't dominate. What we saw Torrance do, what we see Alan Johnson cars do at particular events or throughout a year, Antron, you can look at his championship season. He's had 4 of them, and you can't look at one single one and say that guy dominated the whole year.
He had a pretty, I think, I want to say 14 more so than 12 might have been, 15 more so than 12 would have been a more predominant year for him. I mean, he had run together a few wins, But yes, like you said, when we think Steve Torrence dominance, okay, Swift the countdown. Okay, he won all these, or Tony Schumacher dominance, won 15 of the 23 races, stuff like that, where, okay, that makes sense. But Antron, over the last 15 years, has amassed quite a resume in Top Fuel, and he just sneaks up on it.
Yeah, he does. He kind of picks a race here, may go back to back here and there, and then he might not win again. And all of a sudden, he's just kind of in the right place at the right time and just kind of picks up on you and beats the guys he needs to beat. And then he's kind of like, where'd you come from? Like, you were just seventh in points, and now all of a sudden you're second. Like, you know, he just, it's a weird way that he wins, but he wins and he gets the job done. I mean, he's a 4-time world championship driver for a reason, and with the same crew. I mean, Brian Karate, Mark Oswald, and Brad Mason. Granted, Mark's not there this year. And maybe that's the secret. That same core group of guys. You know,
well, and he said, I mean, when they had that trouble where they came up at the last minute, they were struggling. They were working on that thing in the staging lanes as well. And he said, none of my guys, none of them wavered. None of them looked like they had any issue with anything. They just went out there. They did what they needed to do. They knew what the problem was. I believe he said it was either at warm-up or something that happened in the pits, and they found there was a stud stripped in the block or a hole in the block or something happened, and they're like, it was last minute. We had to thrash to just get that thing out and get it fixed. And everybody just grabbed the tools, did what they needed to do. Nobody panicked. Nobody did anything. They went up there, and you know, the repetition pays off.
No, that's what it takes. I mean, credits to that team. And then in the final round, they make the run that they have to make.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they made the run that they had to make. I mean, they stepped up when they had to step up like true champions do, because Langdon, you knew was going to be there, and those guys weren't going to hold back. And it's like, okay, you can't take anything away from that Mako Tools team. They did what they have to do when they had to do it, and they told you why they're the champion. They're letting you know that they're going to be here this whole year. I mean, like you said, it's going to be. I mean, we didn't see much from Justin Ashley today, but I don't expect that to last for long.
No, he's going to pick up, you know, some wins here and there, and he's going to be part of the conversation. But it's just a matter of, is Antron's team taking a different approach this year? Like you had mentioned, his number one qualifying position was the first since Epping in 2023.
Yeah.
And then the last one that he had before that was Seattle in August of 2017. So in the last 8 years, he's only had 2 number one qualifiers. That team isn't known for going out there and just laying a number down and being at the top of the pack. But look at all the races they've won and the championships they've won. And Antron Brown, to add to that too, is the only driver in the class that has a winning round record against every other driver competing today.
Who would ever thought that? Who would ever thought that? And then here's another thing. We talk about how he doesn't go out there and lay down the numbers to that extent. But then he was the first car in the 360s.
Right.
Now to explain that even better, he wins the first car in the 360s, but by the time that weekend was over, he didn't even have low ET of the weekend.
No.
Because Sean Langdon with the 66, you know, which to me, and this is my personal opinion, is the greatest run I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
That 366 at 299 to half track in 2015, which is still a relevant run till the day, where, you know, left there with the best run. But no, that's just Antron for you. The guy is the first in the 360s and didn't even lead a track with low ET that day.
Right.
I mean,
well, but so furthermore, and look at the first run in the 360s, but whose record did he beat to get into the 360s? If you look back before that, his own, because he went at 370. But when he went that 70, I mean, we're talking epic conditions at Reading, Pennsylvania, in Maple Grove, way back in 2012. So we're talking about Antron and laying down numbers and doing all this stuff. That's over a decade ago. Like, that's how long it's been since he's been at the top of the conversation or a national record type driver.
Yeah. Even when he went to 64 at the Pro Winter Shootout, that surprised me just because you don't see his car run particularly that low.
Right.
I mean, he's usually about, at best, a 67, maybe a 66. I
Right.
can't recall a 66 even coming from that car. His 67 to 69, if you're going to do 60s, it seems to be his range. So it was just like, wow, okay. But once again, you can't take nothing from that team, man. They did what they have to do. And, on the others, you look at you look at just the class, like you said, as a whole, from top to bottom, it's going to be a dogfight again.
And I'm just wondering if that's their new approach, is they're going out there going, you know what? Let's show them what we could do with this car.
We'll see. And as far as if you want to go opposite end of the spectrum, poor Trip Tatum qualifies well. And the racetrack, which was have given everyone's trouble, it kind of swallowed him up. I mean, he pedaled the car, tried to get back into it, hit the wall, came across the track, hit the other side wall. I don't know if the car is completely destroyed, but it's definitely got to go to the chassis shop and get a little tweaked on. But looking at his expression in his face, I didn't see an interview, at least not on the NHRA live TV thing. They didn't do an interview with him. He did not look happy at all. I mean, you talk about a guy who looks like his dog just died. I mean, that was the look he gave. I mean, that was complete disappointment. And I don't know. Hopefully we see him back this year.
Yeah, I think he probably will be. I mean, he was only going to be part-time to begin with, so they're just going to take that time in between and probably get everything fixed and work on it. And like you say, I hope he'll be back at some point. I don't know really with them running the limited schedule that they are, what races they were kind of picking and choosing to attend anyhow. But I'm sure once they get that thing straightened out, they're going to be a contender from the get-go again. It's just a shame that happened, and you hated to see anybody get their car tore up. And I don't know that you could really say it's driver error. I mean, the track was bald. He pedaled it, but he wasn't out of control when he pedaled it. And as soon as it got sideways, I mean, he was out of it. He's got white throttle blades, so you could see they were closed. There was no doubt. I mean, that thing was closed as it was coming around and sliding towards the wall. No different than the issue Brittany Force had at Pomona a couple years ago. Where that thing just started coming around. She's out of the gas, but when they're going, man.
Yeah, when those cars got so much power, where they're going, you ain't stopping them no time soon. I mean, and you crank the wheel all you want, even headed towards the wall, you had the wheel cranked, and it just wasn't going to do anything. You hate to see that, especially from a team that's that small but put together and runs that well, can run with anybody on any given day. That team has won Gainesville before. And you just hate to see that happen to a team like that. That team usually runs Gainesville, then they'll show up for Indy and maybe one more race in between there. They only run about 3 to 4 races a year. But if that guy had a budget, to run the whole tour, look out. I mean, that's not a car I want to see. But even moving on from there, just as the competition wise, Josh Hart. Josh Hart is going to be a factor this year. He struggled the last 2 seasons, but I look for that car to do some things this year. They brought Jason McCullough in and some guys, and to bounce off things with Rob. Now I'm drawing a blank with the crew chief now.
Is he on that team, or who's Rob with?
Rob's with Sean Reed. Who's with
You're talking about Josh Hart's team?
Yeah, that's he's the crew chief Courtney Force. I just went going blank now.
Ron Douglas.
Ron Douglas, there you go. With Jason McCullough and Ron Douglas, that car looked real well in the Pro Winter Shootout. Was performing better than it has in quite some time. Once again, it's kind of hard to evaluate anyone from Gainesville, especially round 1. I mean, that was just atrocious. I gotta say, coming out of by the time we get to Charlotte, we should be able to see who's where and who's a factor and whatnot. I think everyone in top field is going to be a factor. I don't think Josh Hart's going to be this guy that's going to be a pushover. Last year, he had a car that he usually left on time. It just smoked the tires or just didn't have enough.
Right.
I don't see that happening as much this year. That car looks like it stepped up pretty well in performance. A car that's looking for some performance, I mean, even though he went a couple rounds, is Tony Stewart. Neil Strasburg and those guys, since runnering up in the championship with Leah in 2023, I mean, it's just been a slow car, and I don't know why. I haven't talked to Neil, and I mean, me and him we are good friends, and we do talk from time to time. But even I think they said the most bizarre run was the run they saw Friday night with that car. I was watching the cast, and it was just a run that it looked good and went like 387. I mean, it was like, what the heck,
Right.
But
it was surprising compared to what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, and then I know we joke about it, but in round 1, it went down the track. I mean, it was just like, but for them, that might have been all in for that car. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with that car, but it's running nowhere near the way it was when Leah's driving. I mean, yeah, Tony might be 50 pounds heavier, but I don't think that's it. It's got to be something else going on. And I just would like to see them. I mean, especially as accomplished as a driver as Tony Stewart is, you'd like to see him in there battling for wins and championships in top field as well, much like his wife was 2 years ago. And we'll see. It's going to be a long year. I mean, we got 19 more of these things to go.
Right. I mean, all I could say for that particular team and for Tony in general is at least they made it down the track on 4 runs. You know what? They went a 376, a 387. That was a head scratcher at only 313. He went a 372 and he went a 374. So are they hitting them out of the park and running 60s like everybody else? No. But are they shaking the tires? Are they going up in smoke? No. They're at least getting tuning data. They're getting full pulls, and they're getting something that they can creep up on. So I still think kudos to them because I don't think there are any teams that could say they made it down the track smoke-free or pedal-free for 4 runs this whole weekend. So the fact that they could, even though they weren't low ET, it gives them something to build on, and at least they don't have to worry about going into these places where towards the end of last year, they had so much trouble shaking the tires and going up in smoke early in the runs. Tony was going into Q4 on the outside looking in, and they were struggling just to make the field.
Yeah.
So the fact that they can at least make clean passes, get some tuning data, and kind of build back up to it, sometimes you got to start fresh. And I don't know that that's necessarily their approach, but kudos for getting it down the track when other people couldn't.
Yeah, you definitely got to give them credit for that. I don't know. I'm thinking that team is just – we've had an off season. They've had time to test, reevaluate things, relook over things, and yet nothing has really changed. Like I said, though, it's one race. We will know a lot more by the time we get to Charlotte.
Yes.
Of where people stand. So we got 19 more of these things to go. I would like to see, I mean, at one point we had 24 races on the schedule. I'd like to see a lot more tracks back involved, but with the loss of Houston, Englishtown, Denver, Atlanta, I don't know what the story is with Denver. Has you heard anything? I've heard they've acquired property out the way, but I don't know what's the deal with, maybe a year or two. And
not other than they were trying to get another track built to get racing back out there. But I don't think there's not even been an announcement where they've said, okay, we've broken ground and we've got this facility. Here's our plans. Here's what we're doing. They haven't even got to that point yet. So we're still at least a year or two away from ever seeing racing come back to Denver at this point. And I don't really know what their plans are with the Flying H Raceway.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
As far as getting on the national event level. So I think we're kind of status quo for now and just keep repeating the tracks we've got.
Yeah, I mean, last I've heard is they did acquire the land or something, or we're looking at land out near the airport somewhere in the Colorado area. That's the last I've been heard. Flying H was built, and it was being brought up as, okay, when Topeka leaves, this is where we're going to go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the facility is not big enough to handle a national event. I don't know. I haven't seen the facility. I'm just speculating.
It's not. It doesn't have all the infrastructure that you would need for national event capabilities. Obviously, they've run a few divisional events there, or regional events successfully, but to bring the big show in, I don't think that they're ready for that yet.
Was that the plan when they built that place, or was they kind of
It
that
was.
just
I think. I mean, that was the big thing. Was they were posting all of the images as it was getting built. Here's the tower going up. Here's the stands getting put up. You know, they had. I think Scott Palmer was there testing with a fuel car just to kind of be like, all right, look, the track can handle a fuel car. It's a smooth facility. And then they just kind of are not in the national event conversation right now.
Well, we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
20 races, we'll just deal with the 20. Like I said, I'd love to see it go back to 24. I know some people say, well, it means more budget or whatnot, but to me, it shows growth in the sport when you got more races and more venues, more cities you're visiting. Yeah.
I mean, it's got a 1990s feel with, 18, 19 races. That's all we had in the 90s, if you think going through there, and that was pretty popular. I think that the thing that they could probably work on a little bit better might be scheduling them a little closer to each other. Because you've only got Joliet in May. That's the only track, only event you got there.
You got to string them out to make it to Pomona in November.
Look at it this way. So they used to end it, at least from what I remember, the season would start in Pomona mid-February and it would end in Pomona sometimes right around Halloween weekend. We wouldn't
right around Halloween.
So we don't need to be going that far into it. Let's back it up a little bit and, shorten it up a little bit. But you also need to give the teams the time to rebuild and travel between races too. So, I mean, I don't know where the real sweet spot is, but I feel like if you're going to have less races, condense the calendar, which, I mean, I guess we are because we're starting the year right now at the beginning of March. So we're going March to November as opposed to February to November. So you're getting a couple extra weeks there, but I don't know. There's the ones that they string together in a row. I think they could stretch out a little bit and, have, 2 a month.
Yeah, 2 a month wouldn't be bad. Yeah, 3 a month. I mean, on average, 19 races and what? How long is the season? 7 months?
Because, I mean, you're looking at like they go back to back to back to back to start the countdown. They give you all of those in a row right after Indy. Then we're just going Reading, Charlotte, Dallas and getting those knocked out or Reading, Charlotte, and St. Louis. And then you got the last 3. So it just seems like you could probably stretch it out a little bit better. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoy when you run them consecutively, but at that point, just run 20 in a row and call it done.
Well, I guess there's all the logistics that are involved of what else is going on that weekend, what other big events are taking place. You kind of want to you kind of don't want to overlap something else that might take away from your crowd or viewership. So
I get that.
So it's a lot that goes into it. Well, Dave, race 1 is in the books. Next time we'll have video highlights. We might. I'll be in Arizona, so I don't know if I'll get back.
I was going to say, unless your video might be your home shot from your cell phone in the stand, right?
Yeah, maybe. I got to figure out how I'm going to do that one. But you know what? We got a new season. I'm going to try to have some guests during the off seasons, doing the off weeks. I might try to have a guest or two come in and talk about some things. I got some people in mind I won't share yet, but I'm talking to that I've been speaking with. New year, man. Let's get this show on the road, and I'll be in Phoenix and Pomona. Hopefully, it doesn't rain in either one of those places. And
you're good. You'll be good.
No more rain. Yeah, no more rain. That's what we're hoping for. Crossing our fingers. But until then, Dave, man, it's been great. Great to catch back up with you. It's been way too long. We hadn't talked since a plane crash at the Pomona pit area in November.
Right.
And hey, season has begun. Didn't turn out the way we wanted to weather-wise, but hey, cream rise to the top in top field. Antron Brown, Greg Anderson making the final round. Jeff Farr struggled. Chad Green got the surprise win, and Gage Herrera does what Gage Herrera does. Till next week, guys. Man, we'll see you. I'll talk to you guys after Phoenix.
Right.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for watching.